Hey everyone, it's David Barnett. How are you today? It's great to have you with me. Of course, today is the sixth annual Christmas Eve special. I've got five great small business friends lined up to come and join us here today. Starting with Mike Finger, who comes and visits every once in a while. I actually hosted a show with him at one time. We've also got, of course, our Christmas reindeer. And if you stay long enough, I'm going to put a hat on, so you'll be able to see what I look like with a hat. So stay tuned. We're going to kick things off here in just a minute. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win. All right. Well, let's kick things off. Let's bring Mike Finger out onto the stage, and we'll say, "Hey, Mike, Merry Christmas. How you doing?"
Same to you, David. I'm well. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I can hardly believe that we are at the end of the year. Throughout the course of this year, every month when I would, do my bank reconciliation and finish up my books and stuff, I would always take a look at the year-to-date performance, compare it to the previous year and all that kind of thing. And it honestly just seems like the other day when I was looking at like the end of April or the end of June or the end
Right.
of August, like I can hardly believe that we're already here at the end of the year.
It flies by. It flies by. And David, I'd like to go straight to the highlight of the year, if that's okay,
Okay.
which obviously was our opportunity to meet face to face and spend a little time together in the beautiful city of Toronto. So that was a treat. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
It was good. Just happened to line up with a long weekend where I'd promised to take my son to go see a Jays game, and it was really just happenstance that we happened to talk the week before and mentioned that I was going to be there, because
Indeed.
otherwise I wouldn't have known that you were planning to be there on a completely different kind of trip.
Indeed.
And so it was very lucky. And it was great. We met and had lunch, and it's funny because like, when did we first meet? I can recall talking with you on the telephone back when I used to have my office in what is my daughter's room, and I know that that has to be like 7, 8 years ago, maybe?
Oh, at least I would think at least. Yeah, it's been a fun journey. Six of these, you say. This is the sixth annual, huh?
That's right. That's right. And people are pouring in from all over the world. We've already got Kevin. Hey, Kevin, down in Lakeland, Florida, saying hello. Hi, good to see you, Kevin. And Justin Money Bootcamp, who I believe is in Ireland, says he can't watch live, so he's dropping a like to support in advance. Great chat every year. Keep up the good work, David and guests. Thank you so much, Justin. We're going to have a great time today, and we're going to talk about the things that have been happening over the past year. We're going to talk about things that we think are going to be important here for the year that's coming up. And my goal in all of these Christmas Eve specials is always to create some kind of content that people could listen to, while in the car driving to grandma's house, the trips that people make at Christmas time each year. And it's funny because I first started doing these back because my normal tradition with my ex-wife is that the kids go to her place on Christmas Eve, and then I go get them on Christmas afternoon. We have the big meal all together, like the whole extended divorced fan family. And then I bring the kids over here. Nowadays, the kids pretty much are autonomous. They sort of do whatever they're going to do. One of them has their own car, and so it's kind of interesting how the holiday traditions are evolving, but we still stick to the same schedule. And I don't want to miss out on this because I've got like 6 years invested already. I mean, come
There
on.
is absolutely, absolutely. No, it's been a fun tradition each year to have a conversation because it I mean, we obviously deal in these topics all year long, and
Yeah.
we tend to deal with them fairly. I don't want to say we 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 deal with them directly, and this gives us a conversation to be a little softer, a little more flowing about what's been going on and what we see happening next year. In fact, last year on this call, and I'm gonna gut check you. Last year on this call, I made a bold prediction, and that was that last year, 2024, was going to turn out to be the peak of zero down buy a business hype. And so I'm going to gut check you. Tell me, did my prediction come true? Did 2025 see a volume turn down? I know it didn't go away, but did it see a volume turn down over the frenzy peak of 2024?
I I'm willing to say yes because there's one completely unscientific metric that I'm able to track, which is the number of people that find one of my videos and then immediately send an email to me asking how I can help them buy a business with no money. And in several per month. And now I'm probably getting me so so I'm only getting one of those per month now. So the I'm willing to say hysteria has calmed down a little bit. Um, but I don't know, like, I mean, I certainly am not seeing the same degree of paid promotion on social media with, people trying to fill these webinars and things like that, their sales funnel, program that they might have. I think that there are more and more people out there willing to share their story of how they, you know, may have wasted their time or had disastrous results if they ever did manage to succeed to get into a highly leveraged situation. Uh, some of the absolute nuttiness stuff that I once saw is no longer seeming to appear. And what I mean by that are people who will advise people on how to put together a deal with a lot of leverage, and then they'll get the last little bit of equity through doing something just insane, like a merchant cash advance or something, where they'll literally kneecap themselves, where they're committing a chunk of their revenue to go to a very short, sort of high interest payback loan. It's like it's not only are you gambling that you're going to be successful with the business when you take it over, but you're gambling you're immediately going to grow it by 20% or something.
Right.
Like just I don't see that as much as I was back in 24.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. My sense is that, and this is going to seem counter, my sense is that there's more gurus in the space, but the volume is more diffuse. And I don't think there's the traction there. I think there's, to your point, I don't see the volume of advertising that I used to, and I don't see the sheer hysterical claims and I mean, just because for a little while there, it was over the top, and it seems that that volume has been turned down a little, which I think is really good news for anybody who's entering the buy a business space. Because as you and I both know, um, this is a journey that needs to be walked directly and intentionally, and that claim of a shortcut is man, it's so enticing if you're a buyer.
So I was I wrote an email about this the other day. I sent out to my list, and I had a phone call with a banker, an SBA banker in the US, week before last. And I want to push back a little bit with you on this,
Okay.
on what you're saying there, because I think the people who have always been the business buyers have always remained in the market, and they continue to do deals, and they continue to do smart deals. Because the people that I always used to meet, 5+ years ago or more, were sort of these middle-aged people, or maybe younger middle-aged, like late 30s into their 40s, people that had some kind of business experience. They had some money in the bank, and they said, I want to own a business, but I can see it's risky to start one, so maybe I'll buy one instead. Those people continue to be there, and they're
Oh,
like the actual deal makers because they bring equity to the table. They've got good credit scores and they've got business experience. The buy a business with no money crowd, I think, was literally people trying to capitalize on people who might be enticed to a get rich quick, here's an easy path to riches kind of story. And
Interesting.
so I've met a lot of these people who get sucked into the space because they saw some of this hyperbolic content that you're talking about. And then, because they have no resources and no business experience, like they fizzle out, like they move on to the next shiny object. Um, there are people, if you want to look at like the search funder community, for example, there are people graduating with MBAs that are going out and trying to do deals. But if you look at those communities and you look at the actual number of deals being made, it's tiny. It's like when you and I talk about how many businesses do private equity really buy, right?
Right.
It's the same kind of thing, but with the media that exists online today of sharing the stories of these deals, what ends up happening is it creates this impression that it is a much larger part of the market than it really is. I always get a kick out of I talk with people like lawyers and accountants from all over, and when I'm talking with a lawyer about a deal, I'll ask them like, how many business transfers do you help people do every year? Sometimes these lawyers will tell me they work on 30 or 40 deals, right? So they're doing other kinds of law as well. And then I'll ask them, in the States, how many of those are SBA 7A loans? And they'll tell me like, oh, two, four. And I'm like, okay, so this is because the reality is that tons of businesses are changing hands, but they're doing so in many different kinds of ways with different financing setups, et cetera. But if you listen to the popular online, buy a business media, you only hear about people doing SBA loans. And I think it's because there are people out there obviously creating content who sell these loans, right? Who are in that
Right.
business, which just makes sense. You know, it's really hard to, I don't know, sell healthy breakfast food when you're a banana farmer, versus when you're competing with the cereal company who's got the vested interest in trying to sell their sugary cereal to kids.
100%. I think for me the sympathy goes out to that young aspiring entrepreneur slash owner who historically may have taken the I'm going to go to work for someone for 5 years or 7 years and learn the business and seek out an opportunity. The exposure that they have to that toxic messaging, again, you and I both know it's garbage. Um, I think there's I think there's too many that have learned the hard way that it's garbage.
Yeah.
And I am sympathetic to those because it's a compelling message. Um, it's a false message. But to your point, those that have been uh, maturely buying businesses are continuing to do so.
Yeah. I hope that the noise in that space continues to be muted. The the issue, of course, always is these algorithms and social media, because as
Yeah,
soon as you start to look for something, the algorithm starts to feed you more and more of it. Um, Sometimes that leads people to my content. I have conversations sometimes with these people, and so you might say, well, that's great, David, because these are new potential customers for you, but they're really not, because they're not people that are going to be able to take advantage of the stuff I do or teach because they don't have the resources yet. I mean, I tell a lot of people in their 20s, hey, there's nothing wrong with taking an 8 to 10 year detour to go work somewhere and learn a business and really understand how a business works and how to manage people and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, people don't want to hear it.
it's interesting. So do those aspiring buyers who came to the space through that zero down message? Do you find that they come to you skeptical of your more traditional foundational knowledge, or is it like a breath of fresh air for them?
No, they don't come in skeptical because they don't know anything. And I'm not trying to be
Yeah,
rude about that
yeah,
comment, right? But the people who are most susceptible to that kind of messaging when they come across content online are people who literally don't know anything about business.
right.
You're not going to get a CPA hearing a hearing a podcast about buying a business with no money, going, oh my god, I should do that. right?
Right.
Because that CPA in their training and everything they know and everything they've seen in their business and education and stuff is going to tell them, hey, there's something not right about this. It's always people who come from outside the envelope of business, and I encourage people, like, learn. Like, you want to get into business one day? I always ask people, like, where did this idea come from? Where did the idea of getting into business come from? Because there are some people, of course, who dream as youngsters of being in business. Like, I can remember as a teenager walking into businesses and thinking, oh, I could do this better. If they did it this way, it would be better, it'd be faster, it'd be more efficient. Like, I've always had this interest in business, but other people don't. And then they hear one day that they can make money, and then all of a sudden they're interested, right?
Easy money, David, not just money, passive income. You just got to
I
hire
follow
someone to run the business. That you just got
I
to hire a
follow this
manager.
I follow this Twitter account called Chase Passive Income. It's hilarious. It's a parody account, and
Okay,
he's always making fun of this stuff, and it's hilarious. If you want to chuckle and you're on Twitter, follow Chase Passive Income. Shout out to
very
them.
good.
But he's always putting stuff in there about this kind of thing, and he uses AI to put vending machines in hilarious places and stuff like that.
David, what
Um,
impact do you see on sellers from the messaging? What happens to potential sellers after they've had a dozen zero money down prospects knock on their door?
well, I think that the people who are using business brokers are being somewhat insulated from this because the brokers get burned once, and then the brokers start to put up hurdles, right? And so the brokers start to ask for, we want some evidence that you have some money to put into this. We want some evidence that you're qualified, et cetera, before they're letting them in. The the sellers that are doing it on their own, the ones who work with us, we actually give them a heads up. One of the things that we did this year when we redid our business exit online program, Exit Ready, is we created a tool for vetting buyers, like a questionnaire, like a checklist sort of thing that people can use specifically for this reason, because people will legitimately waste a ton of your time trying to implement some sort of playbook that one of these gurus has taught them. And here's the funny thing: there are legitimate deal makers out there called independent sponsors who don't have money, but actually do put deals together, right? And so with anything online that is kind of scammy, there's always a drop of truth in there somewhere, right? That kind of gives it credibility. But here's the difference. These independent sponsors are typically looking for larger business deals, and they typically are people who are like industry veterans in a certain sector,
Sure.
and they've got management leadership experience. And because of this experience, they legitimately do have real relationships with people that are ready to put up money for the right deal. And it is a legit process, right? And there's even independent sponsor conferences that happen. There's actually a podcast I listen to that is just about these independent sponsors. But again, just like your comments that we've heard before about private equity, how many deals are they doing?
Right.
It's a very tiny group. And a lot of the time when I'm talking with people, they'll hear something or they'll hear about a strategy or the way something works for these larger mid-market businesses, and then they'll think that they can apply the playbook to a Main Street deal.
Right.
And it often doesn't translate.
Yeah, I've come to refer to those as 2% truths. They're true. It's just that they apply to such a small portion of the market, but they're overstressed from a volume perspective. And again, if you're a seller, if you're an owner, one of my favorite slash least favorite is always that ESOP option, right? It's, well, maybe I should consider selling through an ESOP to my employees. And it's like, well, you're unprofitable and you have six guys that work for you. This is not ESOP territory, but you would never know that from seeing the material, or you can go to the 3-hour luncheon sponsored by such and such and be convinced that it's it. And yet nowhere does someone say, here's a basic revenue threshold. Here's a profit threshold. How about if
Well,
you don't get into one of those, you can ignore this topic entirely?
so I can tell you those thresholds because I interviewed a guy who does this full time. He's an attorney who sets these things up. And what he told me is that it's like a quarter million to $400,000 to set the thing up.
Yep.
And then on an annual basis, you've got governance requirements that could easily be 50, $70,000 a year
Right.
because you're always reevaluating the business in a like a full blown report by a certified appraiser, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And he was like, unless you have an EBITDA north of 750, 750,000, this is not even a thing for you.
Right. Right.
And he told me that his phone rings off the hook from the people you just described. The
Right.
guy with 6 employees who doesn't make any money, who says, I want to set up an ESOP. And and he just has to keep saying no all day long.
Right. Right. And again, it's that chronic content problem that we have in this space, where again that 2% truth gets pushed out by someone who has a vested interest in selling that product, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But
Clara says, eek.
no, it's ESOP, not ESOP.
you, you misspelled it, Clara.
Love that.
Victor over in Nottingham says, season's greetings. I've given you a like. Thank you so much. And for everyone else out there, please give us a like if you're enjoying the show so far. Um, what sort of, you work with people who often have troubled businesses, meaning that they're not earning enough money, but they think they want to get out, and you coach them and work with them to help them to do that. Have you seen a change with the people that you're working with in 2025 as far as the challenges or the hurdles?
It's a great question. I think if I were to define what's changed in 2025, it is a lack of clarity. I can't say to you that all of the small business owners I'm working with say this anymore. Say times are good or times are bad. I would say historically there's tended to be more of a accumulation of opinion around it, and right now it feels murky to me. I
Mhm.
don't know if that resonates for you.
Yeah, it does because right now there are whole swaths of small businesses which have suddenly suffered a material change. So every year I do the holiday chat specials. So I just finished recording number 7. We had 9 set up. I messed up the recording on one of them, and one person unfortunately had to cancel last minute. But one of the calls was with a gentleman who was looking at a business that sells labeling and packaging equipment to manufacturers. Okay. So off the get-go, you might say, well, if they're, and this is in the States, and you might say if they're selling to manufacturers and the government's policies are supposed to be favoring manufacturers, then this should be a good thing. Except all the equipment that they sell and service comes from Europe. And so ahead of the tariff implementation, they brought in a bunch of extra stuff and they've been selling that stuff. And the guy was basically looking at financial statements showing how the business used to perform under with no tariffs. And as we went into it and started looking at, what is going to happen with this business, we don't know if they'll be able to raise their prices by the amount of the tariff by 15%. We don't know if they're going to have to cut their margin a little bit to get people to buy their stuff based on whomever they're competing with. We don't know if the demand from their customers is going to be the same because their customers could also be affected by tariffs and things and the general economic slowdown with inflation eating into, people's incomes. If you're selling a discretionary product, your sales could go down, right?
Right.
Just people can't afford it. And so basically, by the time we were finished our call, I was showing the guy nobody can buy this business until they close their 26 and 27 books
Hmm.
to actually see what the performance of this business is under this new economic reality.
Right.
And there are enormous numbers of businesses that fall into this kind of category where the conditions have out now all changed. And buyers want demonstrable regular cash flow that they feel comfortable with that can service their debt that they take on to buy the business. And that's just been upended for anyone. that manufactures with aluminum or steel, anyone that imports a good chunk of their inputs into whatever it is that they do. All of these people in the U.S. have suddenly, have these questions. And then in Canada, there's businesses that are negatively impacted by reduced trade because they used to sell a lot of stuff to the U.S. or they own a business that's down the street from an aluminum plant, right? So like there's this cloud of uncertainty that's come in over huge sections of the economy, and business people know this, but it hasn't trickled down to the everyday Joe yet. And I think the further away you are from a business that actually handles import export, the more blissfully ignorant you may be. But I think the news this week of, was it Jim Beam is closing their distillery for a full year?
Right.
Like, like people in Tennessee now have to pay attention. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, how is it that this business, which has been going for hundreds of years, suddenly is closing for a year because of a glut of inventory, right? And all of this stuff has to work its way through before many of these businesses, would become sellable businesses again,
100%.
according to what we know that buyers want.
And that's just one of the macro issues, right? Let's talk about AI and the impact on certain industries. Let's talk about other macro issues that create this. Again, I've got clients that are doing extraordinarily well, and I've got clients that are struggling, and I've got clients that really don't know how they're doing based on exactly what you just talked about, right? Well, 25 is ending okay, but I'm not sure about this, that, or the other the way I normally would be. And so, yeah, that's to answer your question. That's the trending that I'm seeing is less clarity about the trend.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's always a struggle, right? I mean, with the people that you help, once you get them into a profitable position where they can see that they're making money and that they understand what they need to do in their business to manage it better to make money, how many of them change their mind about selling?
It's interesting, I'm a very narrow slice in response to that question. I'm seeing more clients, I'm seeing more owners change their mind to sell instead of change their mind not to sell. I find myself talking with owners who will come to me and say, "Hey, I'm interested in being prepared for sale. I don't want to sell right now." And we start that conversation and we poke on some of those key questions that an owner needs to wrestle with. And as we start to do that, I'm seeing owners get much more comfortable with the concept of selling. They find that they're going to be able to hit their financial goal. They find they have more clarity about what's happening after they sell than they thought they might. And so, but again, we're dealing with a very small sample size here relative to what I'm seeing.
Uh, we have we have a question here. Maybe you can help me with this one. It says, "Hi, David and Mike. Merry Christmas. How to choose a good lawyer? I heard they kill deals."
Hmm. Yeah, they do. I've seen it. You've seen it, right?
Well, you know, I know that they. How do I hide the comment? Oh, are you there? Are you stuck?
Are
Did you
you?
freeze for a minute?
No, I'm still here, David. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. So was that the lawyers attacking the broadcast, do you think?
They're listening. They're listening. How do you choose a good one? I think let's start with this basic premise. Don't assume a lawyer can do a deal for you.
Yes.
There's a difference between someone with experience in this space and someone who is um, licensed and could do work in this space.
I agree. Um, a good lawyer, That's their job, literally, right? And if you tell them that you are afraid of all those things, they will create documentation meant to protect you from that, which will make longer and longer and longer contracts, which is their job.
Yep.
Okay. What many buyers don't really understand is what their job is. So your job as a business buyer is to be the one who controls and manages this process. So you can say to the lawyer, I'm not afraid of that thing, or I'm okay with that risk.
Exactly.
We don't need to address that thing, right? Because if you just agree with everything they suggest, you'll end up with these monstrous contracts that will end up scaring the other party. And so you have to manage what's going on in your deal, and remember that it's your deal and you're the one in charge. And
My favorite lawyer ever, David, told me exactly that. She sat me down and she said, "My job is to show you the parade of horribles." That's what she called it. She said, "My job is to show you the parade of horribles. Your job is to decide which of those risks you're comfortable maintaining." The relationship worked great because then she could tell me the 17 things that might go wrong, and I'd say, "Protect me against these three. I'm okay with the other 14."
yep, yep, and just experience with deal making is critical. We I see things happen all the time where someone will get a lawyer who's more experienced with like real estate transactions, trying to do a business deal, and they'll treat it more like a real estate deal, and sometimes get stuck on things that are kind of silly and don't really matter, and it'll bog things down. I've had many situations. Oh, Rocky just arrived. We'll add him to the stage. Hey, Rocky. um, I've had I've had many deals where the buyer's lawyer will say, oh, they're sticking on these points, they're creating a problem, and their lawyer won't give any ground with me. And then I'll say to the buyer, for example, well, what does the seller say? Well, I haven't talked to him in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you call up the seller and
Right.
tell him, like, here's the list of things that seem to be sticking, what's up? 9 times out of 10, the buyer and seller can just like eliminate that list, just run through the things one after another and make decisions on them, and then tell the lawyers, this is what we're doing. And the whole
Right.
thing's cleared up. The problem is the communication falls apart. The buyer and seller let the lawyers, work things out, when in fact it's your deal. You need to have the communication with the other party. And that's how you're going to manage to get things to move through, and get finished.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rocky, how
Rocky,
are you, sir?
any advice on
Great.
finding a lawyer for a business deal, Rocky?
Oh, God help us. I'm listening to this conversation and it's kind of funny because Mike always talks about the deal. The deal is about the numbers, right? It's about the cash. You know what school they don't have in law school? What class they don't have in law school? Math class. So when you get your lawyer involved with math and numbers, God help you. And that's why I think that the seller and the buyer should communicate, because when the attorneys negotiate, they're just running up the fees and they may not be representing your best interests. I love that whole thing about parade of horribles. Um, because that's what they're there to protect you against. And you have to decide what's good, what's bad, and kind of what works for you. And then you have to read what your attorney wrote. I
Yeah,
cannot tell you how often I go through contracts for my clients and I'm like, you said X, this contract says Y.
it's a
Like,
great point, Rocky. When I was a business broker, when I had my office, I used to tell both of the lawyers that they had to send their paperwork through me. They couldn't send it directly to each other. And boy, did I get resistance most of the time from them. No, what do you mean? I'm not going to send it to you. And I would actually get the buyer and the seller to put it like in their instructions that they had to send stuff to me. And I would get contracts that would be all written up, and the contract would not match the offer. And like, if that had gone to the other attorney, they would have gone through and said, oh, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that, they're trying to get away with this, when in reality the guy just made mistakes or
Yeah.
didn't read it carefully, right? And so I used to constantly send these things back saying that does not match the offer. That's not what was agreed, and get them to fix it. and it helped the whole process move really much more quickly.
You're the oil. You have to get the communication. I think that's the biggest problem is the lack of communication or the lack of understanding what was communicated. And actually in today's world it's even funnier cuz everyone's using AI. And so the opposing side takes your contract, throws it in AI and says, "Hey, what are the issues?" Well, here's the funny thing I saw that was read somewhere. The person who put it in AI forgot to say, "I'm on this side of the contract." So they'd sent back all these things that was actually beneficial to the other side. And they're like, "Sure, we'll do that for you."
No
That's
problem.
funny.
No
That's
problem.
funny. Yeah,
You
yeah,
have
yeah,
to be
yeah.
careful.
Gentlemen, it has been a true pleasure. I'm going to bow out and just say happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you both, and we'll continue to listen and enjoy the conversation. David, thank you again for the invite.
No problem, Mike. Good to see you again. And Merry Christmas. And if people want to find out more of your stuff, exitoasis.com is the place to go.
That's right.
Awesome. We'll see you later.
Good seeing
Take
you,
care.
Mike.
Bye-bye, Rocky.
We just to wrap up on the lawyer comment. We have one comment here. It says, "I've worked in M&A for over 6 years. Lawyers are one of the biggest reasons deals don't go through. One big sticking point with real estate lawyers is asking for personal guarantees on vendor takebacks." Yeah, yeah, I know. This is one of the things too. Seller financing. If the business is valuable and the seller's financing part of it for you, then the ability to take the business back is the collateral for the seller note. In my book, I don't blame sellers for asking for a personal guarantee. You don't get what's fair, you get what you negotiate. But, so ask for it, but, any buyer that works with me is told to say no to that particular thing. And then we've got, Victor says, "Have you had a business lawyer on your channel?" Yeah, I have over the years for live chats, many of them. Yeah. Rocky, what's we're asking people how 2025 has been. You want us to give us a little year in review as far as what you've seen with the people that you work with? You work with people that are trying to make their businesses more profitable, and so what kind of challenges are you seeing?
We've seen a divergence. In other words, there's winners and losers.
This is that whole K-shaped recovery thing.
Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily know. I think certain industries got hit hard and certain industries are unaffected and doing really well. And even just segments within an industry are doing better than other segments. And so that's what we're kind of noticing. Sometimes it's geography, but a lot of times we're noticing across certain types of businesses, there have been dramatic shifts. So, for example, I think the marketing industry, those agencies took a hit probably in 24 and continued in 25 because AI has played a big part of that game, I think.
Right.
Um, I'm seeing my pool builders are taking off, my deck builders are struggling. And so I think because a lot of people built decks post COVID, and now the next thing they're doing is trying to get that pool in because they couldn't get the pool during COVID because it was so backed up. Or maybe something changed. I don't know. I can't find rhyme or reason to it. I just noticed that certain people are doing well and certain people are some of those businesses are literally getting punched in the face, like hard hit. And it's like,
You mentioned
whoa.
geography. Are there certain parts of the country you think are doing better than others?
I think that depends on what you're doing. So real estate is dramatically geography driven. Certain areas are still booming, certain areas are not. Um, I think for B2B, if you're serving a national audience, I don't think it matters. Uh, Beyond that, it's the local economy. So that can drive any kind of business plus or minus.
I remember last year you were telling me, I can't remember if it was on the show or maybe offline, but you were telling me that for 2025 you were going to go to fewer conferences in your own business. You were kind of like reassessing what you do. How'd that work out? How many fewer did you go to, and did it have a big impact on your recruiting? I mean, I didn't see you in Oregon this year. I would normally have run into you at FinCon, but tell me how it changed your business.
I went to out of all the conferences I went to in the prior year, I went to 0. So and I go to a
Really?
lot. I go to quite a few, and I went to 0. I added 1 at the beginning of the year, and I added 1 at the end of the year. Um, and I think for 2026, those are the only 2 I'm gonna go to going forward. So part of it is really getting super focused on where do I wanna be, doing the work there, and then turning off all the rest of the noise and saying, "I'm just not gonna do these things." It it becomes over like post-COVID, travel costs have skyrocketed. So it's not even the
Yes.
cost of the conference, it's the cost of everything else around it, and then it's the cost of not being in the office, and so that's a big part.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question that I hope you answer honestly. Um, for a small business owner, I mean, you and I, we like business. Like
Mhm.
we do business all day long, but like I also consider business one of my hobbies. I just if I talk to a stranger at a holiday party, I'm going to be talking about their business if they're a business owner, right? And so as a business owner who can go travel to conferences as a business expense legitimately, I think there's a certain allure there to go to conferences that you think might be interesting or fun. And because it's almost kind of like a fun trip, right? And so did you find that some of these trips you were taking at some of the conferences you were going to were kind of falling into that category? And you kind of redisciplined yourself with respect to ROI?
Some of them, yes, to a certain extent, and I'll be honest, if there is a conference where one of my kids lives, there's a good chance I'm going, not because it turns it into a business expense, right? So
Right.
that is a possibility. I also think though, after a while, when you've gone to a lot of places, the allure drops away. And so
Sure.
I think I'm just in a different season of life where the allure has dropped back and I'm more interested in being in certain types of things. But that said, the conference that I am going to this coming up year, I extended my trip much longer for that particular one. So I'm slowing down and just changing the way I experience those types of things.
What what else is new? What do you think you're going to see in 2026?
I think we're going to continue to see uncertainty.
Yeah.
Um, talking about Parade of Horribles, right? When he said that, I was like, oh, that's what I do. As their CFO, my job is to look at all the ways we can lose money and either stop them, prevent them, or recalibrate them to making money. And so I do appreciate that. The one thing that we have not had is a recession since 2008. I don't remember any period of time where we have gone this long without some sort of a blip. Now, I think COVID would have been our blip. However, the government printed so much money and handed out so much money in that time that it changed the way that whole thing felt.
It's interesting because I was looking at some of the older stuff that I made, and I was actually talking in 2019 about how I felt that 2020 was going to be a recession year.
Yeah.
I think that there were a lot of indicators showing that the economy was slowing down. Um, Not that I was predicting what happened, but
Mm-mm.
I think you're right. I think when they did the shutdowns and they create, the emergency scenario was there, and they said we have to respond to this, and they, printed all the money, did all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think the can just got pushed. What I'm hearing of more and more of is people who now have those 2020, 2021 era loans, because a lot of the government help was not grants, it was loans. People with these, COVID era loans are struggling with the repayment, and now finally what do they call the hens have come home to roost or something like that. Like it's now compounding the slowdown that's happening today.
And that is the case. When people got money back then and they were getting massive EIDL loans, we had a very simple philosophy. Take the money because the government's giving it to you at a low price. You'll never get it again. Lock it up. Here's the problem. Most people don't have the discipline to keep their money locked up. And so they spent it. And I said, look, I don't mind you spending money, but we're going to spend money on capital improvements that drive our business. You cannot spend money on day to day operations. And a lot of them wasted it on day to day operations. And so they were
Well, was
paying to the,
was that not the idea though, to help cover payroll and stuff when you might have not been profitable during that time?
that was yes and no. The loans, that was different. So there was the whole money that was handed out to cover payroll. And then there were and that was all forgiven if you paid the payroll.
The PPP loans, right.
The
Yeah.
PPP loans, this was the EIDL, which was capital loans. Here's the thing, how if you're paying people for daily operations out of that loan, you gotta pay it back one day, which is what you're talking about in the experience, and if it hasn't done anything to grow the business, but just survive the business, then you as a business owner did what the government did, which is kick the can down the road, and now you're gonna pay, and some of those payment amounts are really, really expensive.
But we have had some interesting, insights into the EIDL program in the Business Buyer Advantage group coaching program. We have had a couple of members who've been looking at doing deals to buy businesses where there have been these EIDL loans in place. And the documentation and the paperwork seems to imply that the loans are assumable. And when in actual fact, you start to work on the idea of transferring the debt from one party to another to do a business transfer, what is being encountered at the government office, I think it's the SBA, is that they're trying to wheel and deal to like get money in the door. Like one guy in the group was asked, well, if we transfer this over to you, how much down or how much of a lump sum payment could you make against the balance? Yeah, I think that they're under pressure to get this money in because it's been lent out at such low interest rates.
Well, not only that, I think a lot of people are struggling to pay. And a lot of people, I don't know what the data is on not paying. I see a comment on your screen, and
Yeah,
I,
it,
I,
it,
f-
it's just about construction sector being in recession.
and that is one that I think it depends on where you are because
Mm.
I've got builders who are having their best years ever. I've got people on the commercial side who are saying no stoppage, but it's local to their geography. I've got to believe that there are other people in that same industry in another part of the country that are experiencing what was said. And I think that's one where it's highly regional as to what's going on in that market.
I've been watching certain YouTubers who talk about home prices in the U.S. and down in Florida and some of the southern states, house prices have really dropped. And one of the comments that they often say is that in the Midwest and Northeast, like things are still seemingly doing well as far as home prices. And this is the kind of thing you're alluding to.
Correct. And I experienced that in 2025. We sold off some of our rentals and we had no problem selling houses in a weekend over asking with, none of the inspections or any of that.
And you're in
Was that
Pennsylvania.
I'm in Pennsylvania. Was that happening down south? No. Or the other thing is it's the price point. So the homes we sold were entry level homes. If I was selling a much larger home, yes, I might have had a lot more competition. So that's very true. I think it just depends. Again, that's market dynamics based on pricing of what segment of the market you're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and if you talk about commercial real estate in the big cities, I think our commercial office space still struggling. Hotels might still be struggling depending on where they're located. So it's not, I can't give you a blanket statement.
Yeah. We've got an interesting comment here. Again, a question. How is the Canada Small Business Finance Act loan program different from the SBA? So I could answer this, but I made a whole video about it a couple months ago, and it leads me to my next topic, which is, uh, oh shoot, I didn't create a banner for this. I'm going to have to do some production on the fly. Um, so if you go over to davidcbarnettbot.com, it's the new AI robot for David Barnett content. And if you ask any question of that bot, it will literally give you a list of the videos with links to them that might answer your question. And so it's one of the ways that we have brought in a little bit of AI stuff here on the channel. Rocky, how about yourself? You got some AI action going on in your business this year?
All day, every day. I think if you are not using AI, that's a significant roadblock for you. Um, I think there's a lot of different ways to use AI. We did a podcast episode with Jeff Woods, which is AI driven leader, and that was all about how to use AI as a thinking partner. So for business owners,
I
yeah,
just read it. It's really good.
it's a and the interview was phenomenal. It changes the way you think about AI. That's what was great about Jeff and that. And Jeff's a great business guy too, and he knows how to drive revenue as well. The point there is a lot of business owners don't have the ability, like we're all ADHD, right? A million thoughts, crazy stuff. ChatGPT loves that. It will take all of that convoluted stuff and start asking us the right questions. So that's part of it. You have to have a conversation with ChatGPT. I've always said if you ask kindergarten questions, you get kindergarten answers. But if you start to ask better questions and then you tell AI, ask me questions so that you can be providing me a better answer, then the conversation gets deep and it really helps you think through how to do stuff. I also do it just to learn how to do stuff quickly, whether it be Excel or something else, or even my marketing copy or anything like that. How do I improve it? It's not perfect. Like, I think that's where people get it
Mm.
wrong. You've got to
I
start with
I
your core and then polish it at the end.
Yeah, what I have found is that I'm realizing that it's really good at doing computer stuff. So, um, some people will ask it, create this thing. But if you give it something to work with, but if you give it something to work with, like here's a 2-hour conversation I had. Can you summarize this into a case study? It'll do a great job at that, right? Because you're giving it something to work with. And just the other day, I uploaded 12 months of credit card statements into it, and I said, I want you to analyze, these credit cards. I want you to tell me, what my, software as a service spending footprint looks like, and what the different tools are I'm using, and can you make any suggestions about it? And it did a great job of like just summarizing, gave me a list of my top, software expenses that were monthly charges. Uh, that kind of stuff, it really excels at. And I actually have a little deck of cards, like daily affirmation cards I go through, and I've added one to challenge me to think of a new way to use AI, because you have to get into the habit of asking yourself, is there a way I could somehow use AI for this task? Now, here's a big question. We all know that these large language model AI things are being heavily subsidized by venture capitalists buying stock in these companies. And what I asked ChatGPT, I said, if there was no venture capital in cash going into the LLM industry and OpenAI, for example, had to make money off of its user base, what would it need to be charging for a ChatGPT account? And it figured out, according to it, that it would be almost $1,400 a month because of the giant capex expenditures that they're making. And I realized, hey, at some point this thing has to turn, and they actually have to start making positive cash flow. And I don't think people are going to be subscribing to this thing anymore to make funny cat pictures,
No,
right?
so think about it. When Google first came out, right? People didn't understand it, including me. If you wanted to buy a keyword, it was a penny. And so Google was selling all the keywords you wanted for a penny. So if you were an HVAC and you wanted to buy up all the keywords for HVAC in your area, for $1, you got 20 leads. Today, Google is charging $100 per that keyword. And now, if you want to buy it, you're spending thousands of dollars. I think the same thing is going to happen in the world of AI. Right now, it's cheap. In the future, it's going to be expensive, and you're not going to be able to play around. You're going to have to be able to do this better. Now, that said, I think the opposite end, where Google is somewhat limiting, I think the world of AI, someone might come out with a newer model that's more efficient. Maybe it doesn't do as much, which I don't
Mm.
need it to do everything. I just need it to do
Oh,
these certain things. Then that might come at a discount.
I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about this, and they were talking about how the older models, like, when ChatGPT says, "Oh, it's 5.2 now," the older models are still available to use. You can select them, and that these older models are less, resource intensive, for example. And so this is going to be one of the things that really comes into play in the future, is going to be determining which model to send a particular request to. Can we get an older model to process this simpler, the kindergarten question, right? Can we? And what I find interesting about it, though, is that it's not scalable software the way that other software has been before, right? So you build a new application of some kind on the internet, and whether you put 100 users or 100,000 users on it, it's all the same kind of input output processing. There's a scalability built in. Whereas with AI, everything that goes in has to be like go through the whole machine and be processed. And this is why they have to grow to all these data centers and everything.
Yeah, it's wild and it's changing so fast. And if you're not constantly keeping up, you're getting behind. And I'm just shocked at how many different things are out there. And that's one of my goals over this holiday season. Right now, I would say 90+% of my stuff is on ChatGPT, and I pay for the $200 model.
Me
I'm
too. Me too.
I'm about to go get and pay for Perplexity, maybe Claude. Um, I forget the other ones. There's so many. I'm going to go pay for a handful of them. And I'm going to start playing with different ones to see what are the differences, what's best, what's moving. Um, Gemini supposedly has really stepped up. I have Copilot. Like I'm not using as much of it as I should, and I'm not learning how to use the other models. So that's my goal in the first quarter, is more time learning some of these different models and how they all work and which one is best for which particular situation.
The oh, I sorry, I think I accidentally hit play on Instagram, and did you hear that repeating everything?
No, but you kind
Oh.
of are glitching every so often.
It was Skynet trying to interrupt our conversation.
Oh, okay.
We were being unflattering to AI.
Oh,
A
no.
couple more comments in here. Someone says AI is great, will boost productivity for any user, but the circular deals in the industry are cause for concern. Yeah, I've seen in the domain of people that talk about stocks and stuff on the internet, talking about this kind of thing. Um, you know, the other comment here, not only is it not the same software model, the equipment that all the tech firms are investing in right now are going to depreciate like nothing in the industry has seen. The chips will need upgrades. I agree. And speaking of AI, someone who talks about AI all the time is here. This is Lauren Feldman. Hey, good to see you, Lauren. Um, Rocky, just to to wrap things up, you got any big hints or gotchas or things to watch out for here in the coming year for 2026 for small business owners?
I think, and we didn't really talk about it, the number one thing any business owner needs to do is actually model out their business from a math equation. And once you know the math of your business, then you just monitor that and make sure it's doing what it's doing. More often than not, most business owners don't pay attention to that. And if you don't, you get surprised one day with no cash flow and struggles and all of that. So, AI is here to help you, have it help you figure out what you should be looking at in your business and how to model it out so that you make money. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of business: make money. Everything else is a result of that. You can't hire people, you can't pay great wages, you can't give back to charity and do all those wonderful things until you have cash. So go make some cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And take action when you need to. One of the things that I always am seeing people do is that they'll be afraid to do something like raise a price or something because they're worried about how people might react. But if you find yourself in a place where you're not making money, then you've got to change something, or else you're just going to end up closing. And everyone out there is making changes in their business all the time. I always point to the example of big companies, like big companies are raising prices or doing different things. I had a couple months ago, I was talking with someone who owned an ice cream shop, and they were talking about how the Dairy Queen down the street was overpriced. And I said, "Are they still open?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Are people going there and paying the prices?" "Yeah." "Maybe it's not overpriced."
Here's the thing though, if you raise your prices and you lose some customers, you'll probably make more money and work less.
Yeah. 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 I know I should double the cost of this YouTube channel.
There you
What
go.
is 2 times 0?
Schools are closed, Rocky. This is not a place for that kind of question. Maybe I'll lower the prices by 600%. That seems to be a target that a lot of people are heading for when it comes to reducing prices.
Bit of a political comment there, huh, Dave?
Merry Christmas, Rocky. Great to see you. Great to see you come back this year. I hope you have a great holiday season.
Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll see you later. Lauren, host of the 21 Hats podcast. How are you doing today, Lauren?
I'm doing great. I'm kind of half on vacation. I took a road trip with my wife. We're in Asheville, North Carolina, a beautiful spot that I've never visited before. So I'm doing great, and I'm really delighted and honored to be here with you.
We did a fundraiser actually here for Asheville for the organization that is rebuilding the trails up in the mountains and everything.
Yep.
We did a promotion where part of the proceeds from our Business Buyer Advantage program back in January went to that group, and we did pretty well. We raised like $1,700, I think, for
Wow.
as a donation for that group. So
Nice.
we're pretty happy to do that because I mean I've got a lot of experience with small businesses in and around national parks and other kind of natural tourism kind of places, and I know how critical it is. Like if the park isn't open, then the traffic just goes away, and that's the part that often is very low on the list of priorities for government agencies, right? Because they're thinking like roads and water and sewer, like which I can totally see why. But if you lose the thing that attracts the tourists, and the businesses don't have a chance.
Right, right. It's interesting. If I didn't know about Helene, there are a few remnants of it, but it looks pretty good now. And I know there are a lot of small businesses that haven't made it back. I know a couple people who live in the area who I've spoken to. But if I just showed up here without knowing anything, it looks pretty good, and it's just such a beautiful area.
Mm. You talk with business owners all the time on your podcast. What would you say are some of the big highlights of what you've seen in 2025 as far as the news making headlines?
A couple of things. One is I can't remember a time when no one could agree on whether the economy is good, bad, terrible, indifferent. It's it's like you can find evidence to support whatever you choose to believe, but there's a lot of countervailing evidence out there, and it's hard to know. I think the economy has held up much better than most experts thought it would. I'm no expert. It's certainly held up better than I would have guessed. Although I think there is a big difference between how big businesses have handled this year and smaller businesses. And clearly, for all the obvious reasons, it's been tougher on smaller businesses, but many of them have thrived as well. It makes me really reluctant to try to guess what's going to happen next.
Do you think the fact that there's information out there that can be found to tell one story or the other is an extension of sort of this online echo chamber, maybe influenced a little bit by people creating fake stuff that is kind of symptomatic of the same polarization that's been seen in political discourse?
I think that's been true for some time. I think people have tended to look at the economics through a filter in a way they didn't used to for at least the last 10, 15 years. And I think that has colored things. And that's only, I think you make a great point. That's only gotten more pronounced as time has gone on. And now with AI and AI slop occasionally adding to the confusion, and with the government shutdown here in the US, which people were skeptical about government numbers before. Now they might have really good reason to be skeptical. It just creates a very difficult environment to know where things stand. And I think that kind of plays to what your last guest, Rocky, was saying. I think to some extent, the point he was making is a business owner has to focus on his or her own four walls, the things they can control. And if you're sitting there trying to decide where the macro economy is going to go and where it's going to take you, you're in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, it's that who is it? The Stoics, philosophically have that whole ring of circles, like what you can control and what you
Right.
should be concerned with, maybe, or something like that. But very clearly understanding what is within your control and what is not. And if you spend all your time thinking about what is concerning you, but you have no control over, it's like you drive yourself crazy.
Right. And it's not like if you just stick to what you control, that means you're going to be okay. Because the macro forces may come and get you. That is possible, and you do have to pay some attention to that, but you can't control it, and you got to do the best you can with the hand you're dealt.
Yeah, yeah. Just before you came on, Rocky and I were talking a little bit about AI and AI adoption. I know that on the 21 Hats podcast, you've been talking about AI a lot this year in 2025. What's your prediction for 2026? Are we going to need all these data centers that are being built? Like, do you think there's going to be even further uptake of people implementing this stuff?
Um, I don't know a lot about what the the demand for the data centers will be and where that's going. I do believe AI is just going to be, more and more omnipresent in our lives, and that the demand for it will grow. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't some kind of correction like the dot-com bubble. And, some things will get washed out along the way. But just as the internet is still here today, I think AI is here to stay as well. To me, the interesting question is how business owners like you, and we've talked about this on the podcast, and you've had a lot of interesting things to say about how you've been implementing it. I think there's a lot you can do. There are dangers that you have to watch out for, but the biggest danger of all, I think, would be to ignore it.
I, as I'm beginning to use it more and more often, I'm beginning to understand what the limitations are. I'll tell you the story of what I did with a few people. I'm in a small mastermind group, and so we met together and we each gave an update. And then 2 members did a hot seat, and we recorded that whole meeting with Otter to create a transcript. And we'd already created a project in ChatGPT where we uploaded basic information sheets about all of our companies and our goals and our fears and all this kind of thing. And we created these advisor persona documents. So if you name like 5 or 6, sort of famous, small business advisors, right? So there's a guy named Alan Weiss who's pretty well known in the world of consulting, for example. So because we do consulting work, I put Alan on the list. So we had ChatGPT create this document all about him and his methodologies and stuff he's known for, and that kind of stuff from internet searches. So we took the transcript of our meeting, we put it into this project, and we said, now we'd like you to give us the feedback from our advisors on these 2 hot seat sessions. And each of the advisors, sort of gave their points of view based on their own frameworks and everything. But here was the interesting thing is everything, all of the advice by all of the advisors were actually already comments or variations on comments that other members of the group had mentioned during the meeting. And so we were going through this going, is it trying to please us by feeding back our own commentary within the framework of this understanding it's been programmed with? Or is it really trying to be objective and apply the methodologies and frameworks of these advisor personas and give us sort of honest feedback? And it really left us wondering, because we looked at each one, we're like, oh, you said that, and oh, you mentioned that, and you actually said this one. So I think it's interesting, and I always have to kind of go back to the basic principles of this thing is just knitting words together based on the probability of them appearing in a certain order, given the context, right? And so I think it's very easy for us to believe that it is an intelligence of some kind. I'm not quite sure that as I get to know the inputs and outputs and results, I think it's really good at organizing information. I'm starting to hesitate on what I think where it could go.
I think that's a really good point. I think I don't know. I haven't figured out exactly how to articulate this, but I think there are 2 different categories, and you've identified them. And one is kind of general intelligence, where I think your skepticism is very much warranted. The other is kind of organizing data that you supply to it.
Yeah.
So, like if it's doing an analysis of your P&L statement, it's probably not going to make up stuff. I think there's value in that. I mean, I haven't created the personas that you have, but I have taken podcast transcripts where I've been the host and fed it in and said, please evaluate my performance. How did I do? And the first response tends to be kind of flattering. But if I push it, I usually get some good suggestions on things that I could have done better and that I should keep in mind for future episodes. So I think you're on to something there. But even with those limitations, I do think it's incredibly valuable. I feel like I'm getting a lot out of it.
We are now using it to at one time when I made my YouTube videos for the channel, I would record the YouTube video and then I would just kind of like come up with a title for the video. And now what we're doing is we're taking the transcript of the video and we're putting it into ChatGPT and we're asking it to come up with engaging or alluring or intriguing titles, right? And it's hilarious because it almost always invariably will come up with this kind of formula. It'll be to get something of enormous value while not having to do any kind of work or make any kind of investment. Like everyone is always like that. Like how to achieve this outsized result while not like, and it's just like, it seems like everybody's always trying to look for a shortcut. And then when I think about it, I'm like, that could very well be an engaging title that will get the most clicks on YouTube. But is that going to deliver an audience of people who could become our client? And so it's interesting. We tried it for a while. We got more engagement with the videos. Then we went back to the old way, and we started to get more inquiries. So it was like it was a really like, what do you
But
do?
I have a pretty big need for headlines and titles, and I try it quite a bit. I don't think I've ever taken a title that it suggested and just used it. Um, and there have been times where I've been frustrated and thought, this is a waste of time. I am not doing this anymore. But just in the last month or two, I would say, I think I've gotten better at using it. And what I found is I ask it to suggest, 5 or 10 titles of a particular type, if I'm looking for provocative or whatever.
Yeah,
And it comes back with a bunch of titles that I don't really like, but often there's a germ of a thought in one of them
sure.
that I think I can build on. And so I get into a conversation with it. I will say, what do you think of this version? Or what do you think of that version? And one thing I found is it doesn't just say yes or no. It gives an analysis. This is why this is your suggestion is better than any of the others because, and often it makes really good points, and those points are helpful to me in thinking through where I'm actually going to end up. So I've come up with a process that I think is working for me.
Yeah, I totally think that there's value in that. I've gone through that myself with some, like some letters and other documents that I'm preparing, like sales letter type stuff, and where I ask it for feedback, and it'll suggest some things. So I don't think it's going away. It's not what I'm saying. I just think it's really interesting how it's evolving, and but what I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens in over the next year as things unfold. You alluded to, is there potentially like a stock market bubble in the value of these companies or whatever? I'm not an expert on that. I do understand business valuation methodologies, and that's why I don't own any of them. So, like,
You just froze on me, Dave. I don't know if you can hear
oh,
me. Uh,
am I back? Can you hear me?
Now you're back. There
Yeah, it
you
was the investment bankers trying to get me because I was talking about stock
Careful who
prices.
you criticize.
Listen, Santa Claus is bringing me new internet this year, but unfortunately, it's only coming on Monday. So
Wow. What a
I,
thoughtful gift.
I listen, when you work from home and you rely on the internet, it needs to be reliable.
As I do.
And uh, uh, what has been frustrating for me is that you everything worked fine until about 3 months ago, and then I started to get these little freezing glitches. And of course, you call them after you run every diagnostic you can think of on your own. And I found an online latency test, like how stable is your internet? And the latency test was showing me that every few minutes there's a real lag in the ping speed. And so if you go into a speed test, though, I've got a 1 gigabit connection. It's like super fast. But every once in a while, the latency crawls up. And so I call tech support, and what's the first thing to do is, like, literally in their playbook is to gaslight you, right? Well, our computer shows there's no technical problems in your neighborhood. I'm like, "I'm telling you, I'm having this problem. It's not my computer." "Well, how do you know it's not your computer?" Right? And then and so they go through this whole thing, and then they offer to download new software to your router and all this kinda stuff. And so I did that, and then everything worked the same. Like, I was still having the same problem. And so then eventually I call back again, and they're like, "Well, are you sure it's not your computer?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure it's not my computer." So then they sent me a new router. So this is a box that got delivered. I had to unplug my old thing, plug in the new thing, box up the old thing, and send it in. And I'm
I've
thinking to
I've had to
myself,
go through that. To me, that's the scariest thing. You take it down and you just don't know for sure that it's going to come back up. And what
"Well,
happens then?
well, I plug in the new box, and I'm like, okay, this box is like 3 years old, 3 years newer than the other one. So hopefully it works well." Plug it in, same issues. And then I went on a trip. I was away for a week. And for a week, I was using my computer in hotel rooms, hotel lobbies, and cafes. Never had any of these problems. right?
Not your
So I'm,
computer.
I'm on shared internet with all kinds of other strangers doing who knows what on their computer, and my it works fine, right? I get back here, same problem, right? You call in again, and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure what's happening. Like, our system shows everything's a-okay." Like, fine, call the competitor. Let's switch to the other network. Like, what else can you do? And I don't know if it's because someone moved in across the street who has some kind of crazy usage of the internet or what, but it certainly is frustrating. And I know that everybody out there is just nodding their heads because this is what happens, either whether cell phones or internet. It's like for some reason they create a reason for you to have to hop back and forth between the limited choices every couple years, it seems.
If you'll indulge me, I have a quick story along those lines. A few years ago, and maybe this could be 5 to 10 years ago now. And this particular company, Comcast, I hear has improved its customer service dramatically since then. So I should say that. But at the time, we were having problems with our entire system, phone, TV, and internet. It, it would just go out from time to time. And it seemed to happen when it was raining. And I don't know for sure if that was related or not, but that's something that we observed. And we called them up. They sent somebody out, maybe 2 or 3 times, kept happening. Finally, somebody came back, and it was a really, uh, really delightful guy who just said, "I'm going to solve this problem for you today." He came out on a Saturday, and he said, The first thing I just want you to know, this happened to be a day when the internet was working fine. Everything was okay. It wasn't raining. I'm going to take your internet down. It's going to be down for about 2 hours probably, but then I'm going to put it back up, and I think I can solve your problem." 2 hours pass. 3 hours pass. 4 hours pass. We go looking. The guy's not there. He took the internet down and left. And we got nothing. And it's a Saturday. So we call Comcast and we say, "Hey, your guy was here. Our internet was working fine today, but we have had these problems. He took it down and he left. Can you check with him and find out what his plan is and when we're going to be back up?" And I swear their verbatim response was, "I'm sorry, we have no way of knowing who that technician was or how to reach him." And I said, "Wait a second. You're a communications company, right?" I'm guessing he has a cell phone. And the response verbatim was, "Mr. Feldman, we can't do miracles." We didn't get our internet back for like 3 days. They couldn't get somebody back out to put it back up until like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. I think they've gotten better since then, but
Wow.
we repeat that line around the house. We can't do miracles fairly often.
You have a big event coming up in Cincinnati this year. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. And I'm delighted that you'll be joining us there. I'm
Yeah,
really
I'm
excited
gonna
about
be
this.
there.
Um, we we're going to be hanging out at the place of one of the regulars on the podcast, Mel Gravely, who has a very sizable, prominent Cincinnati construction business with some specialization in healthcare work, like hospitals. So we're gonna meet in his headquarters space. We're gonna get a kind of a VIP tour of one of his construction sites and get an inside look at how that works and what they're doing. And Mel happens to be really plugged in Cincinnati, and he's working on making sure we get to see a couple of other interesting Cincinnati businesses. I'm not ready to announce this yet, but I think there's a good chance that we might be able to hang out in the owner's box at a Cincinnati Reds baseball game one evening.
Wow.
So that's kind of the fun side stuff. The heart of what the event is, as you know, is it's kind of like a 3-day peer group session. I promise people there are going to be no speakers here. Nobody's going to talk at you. It's kind of the result of the experience I think most of us have had, where you go to a conference and you ask people, "Well, what did you think?" And they say, "Well, I like this speaker. I like that speaker." the content was pretty good. I just wish there'd been more time to get to know the other people who attended the conference. There were some great
Yeah.
people there. So that's all we do. We get to know the other people who attend. The way we start is I ask people to throw out topics, and then we vote on them. And then we address those topics in the order in which they get votes. And often it goes off in all kinds of unexpected directions. But it's, something where the people who attend have a certain amount of say in what is going to be discussed and what they're going to get out of it. And, I leave enough time that, even if we don't get to your topic, there's a lot of downtime for, side conversations and long walks where you can talk to somebody else who you've identified as being someone who might have relevant information for you that you could, tap their experiences.
I think it's a great format. I know for myself, whenever I go to any kind of live conference or whatever, it seems like some of the biggest value comes from those side conversations or chatting with someone over coffee or a beer afterwards or something like that. Making those direct contacts and getting to know people and seeing, in particular in the world of small business, like getting to know other people who've been through the same problems that you might be experiencing and that, you're not alone. So many business owners, I think, are rather isolated socially in that, they got family and friends who just aren't other business people. And it's one of the biggest things that I recommend when people get into business is to get yourself some business friends.
I think that's the best advice that you could give to someone. Because, so often when somebody starts a small business, it's not because they know all the things about how to run a business. And certainly getting an MBA can be very valuable. You learn a lot of important skills, but it doesn't teach you everything you need to know about running a business by a long stretch. There's nothing like being able to compare notes with other people on similar journeys. And there are a lot of great organizations out there that can help you do that. Some of them are quite expensive. This is another alternative. And I don't know, it's kind of become my favorite week of the year. It's amazing when you put a group of 25 or 30 business owners in a room, some of whom know each other, most of whom don't. But, once you go around the room and everybody talks about who they are, what they do, what's working, what's not working, it's like a family reunion. The connections, the sparks just start to fly.
And you said this is the 4th year you'll be doing this?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'm looking forward to it, and I wish I could have gone last year. I just had another event kind of almost on top of it, and
almost I think in the same state, right?
it was, yeah. Like I was very very handy to there, and for me, actually, Lauren, in about 3 weeks, one of my children is going to be graduating from high school. The other one has a year and a half left, and so I'm getting to that point where increasingly I'm more a master of my own schedule, I guess. But
Yeah.
they do need to see me every once in a while, at least to buy groceries.
I remember those days. My kids are out of college, so I'm free, and that's part of the reason I'm in Nashville.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. Well, our next guest just popped in. Hey, Mark Mawhinney, how you
Hey
doing today, Mark?
guys. Hey Dave. Hey Lauren.
Hi.
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Merry Christmas.
So, I'm excited. And Lauren, are you having a great holiday season with your family?
Yes, this worked out perfectly for us. Hanukkah was a little bit early, so we did get to see our family. And then, this is such a slow time of the year, as it happens both for my wife's job and certainly for mine. So we took a long road trip, and we're doing a little bit of work on the side, but playing a lot as well.
Well, that's cool. That's awesome. Happy Hanukkah, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the holiday season.
Thank you, and same to both of you.
Have a good one.
Take care now.
See you, Lauren. Bye.
Bye now.
Mark, how are
Hey,
you
Dave.
today, bud?
Good. What's this year number? I was trying to think how many years we've done this.
6.
It's 6.
6.
Wow. Yeah. So if it makes you feel any better, you're probably the only person I'd be doing a Christmas Eve standing appointment with or panel. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I enjoy them every year.
Well, it's like once you're invested in a certain number of them, you have to keep going, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what do they say about idle hands and the devil's work and stuff? So I have fewer calls this week being Christmas week. So I need to have something to keep me occupied a bit.
Of course, Mark, you are right here in Moncton, New Brunswick. You live just home is probably about a week and a half ago, but all of the snow has since melted, and so now it's just
Green
weird,
Christmas.
dreary, and no snow and frickin' cold. Holy cow!
Yeah. I
It
hate
was
snow.
minus 15 Celsius yesterday morning.
Yeah, I hate snow, but I want it on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and then to be done, and that's it. Those 3 days. But yeah, it doesn't look super wintry at the moment.
What? So tell us what you've been seeing in 2025. Now, for those of you who don't know you, why don't you give a quick introduction and tell us about yourself and your business?
Yeah, so my whole thing's helping coaches get more clients. I've been in the online coaching space since March of 2014, so we're coming up to 12 years soon. And yeah, it's been interesting. I was trying to think back to what we talked about last year. There could be some similarities from what I was seeing last year in 2024 versus 2025 here. Obviously, AI is that big elephant in the room, of course, that touches every industry, it seems like. In the coaching world, I think we talked about this last year. There's still a bit of a trust deficit, I find, where people have been burned by great marketers recently, but didn't have anything in the program. So they spent 5, 10, 20K on something, and then there's nothing there. And then we're having to overcome that. And the analogy I use is if it's like you start a relationship with someone new and they've always dated jerks and they've had a bunch of toxic relationships, like say with women, guys who cheated on them or whatever, then you're kind of trying to get past that in this new relationship because they're bringing it into this. So yeah, I think there's still some of that.
Well, let's expand on that a little bit because I think it's very interesting. At the beginning of the special, I had Mike Finger on. He was talking about how he thought 2024 was the peak of the zero down guru kind of stuff with respect to business acquisition, and that also is what you're talking about. It's like there's people buy into some kind of marketing message online, and then they invariably make some kind of investment. They buy some kind of program, some kind of training, some kind of coaching, whatever. In the case of the people that I deal with, often they'll run into me 6, 8, 12 months after they've done that training, and I'll show them why what they were taught could never work. And then people are pretty upset and when they figure out why their deals are not working because they just could never work. And you're talking about almost the same thing where people are being promised certain outcomes or results. Is that typically what it is? And then they're with these high ticketed programs, like you mentioned, 5-figure costs. So what kind of transformations would people sometimes promise that would turn out not to be there within the program?
Well, the running joke years ago was it was a 7-figure dream, and then it'd have to go to 8 figures, and then it went to you see some people, not all, but 9-figure. Like I saw one a while back for his banner on social media. I work with 9-figure business owners for blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, you don't. Come on. So it's the big dollar signs or the promise of doing it with very little work. Work an hour a week and making 7 figures a year. But on the plus side, I do think
this is the theme of the show because I was talking about that with Lauren about headlines and names of videos. So it's basically people promising the world that you can have outlandish, outstanding results with very little effort, etc.
Yeah,
and people want to buy that. That like people literally want that.
On the plus side, I think that buyer skepticism, which we talked about, is higher. So I don't think that's working as much. So back in like 2017, 2018, you could probably get away with a little bit more of the crazy promises. I won't say names. I know of a coach who I used to see regularly back then would just say stuff. I'm like, no, I'll take things that didn't happen for $100, Alex. He'd be like, I usually charge $10,000 an hour for my coaching. For a 1 hour coaching call, but for today only, if you book in, you can get it for $97. It's like, no, you don't charge $10,000. You have a car payment or a rent or something's coming up and you need cash really fast. People have, that's one plus with the trust deficit is that they're much more skeptical and willing to ask questions and not just buy everything that people talk about. You know, the old days when people would rent the airplane stages where they could rent a fake airplane and take pictures on the private jet, and then they would have empty all the luxury designer bags for shopping and everything. I think more and more people see through that now.
I don't know if you've ever seen any advertisements for these places. They're popping up in empty retail spaces. There are these selfie studios where they've got all these little, like, if you can imagine those little like trade show curtain booths, but each one is set up with a certain kind of backdrop or props for people to go in and make selfies. And so one of them might be like all the Louis Vuitton shopping bags. Another one might be like literally the chairs, a business class seat in a private aircraft kind of scene where you sit down and you take your picture as though you're on the
Wow.
airplane. And it's like the whole place is set up with these backdrops and things so that people can create these outlandish sort of photos of themselves. Obviously, it's gotten to the point where people not only don't believe that, but people like openly understand that this is
and mock it. Have you seen the
people are
meme?
mocking it now? Yeah.
Have you seen the meme where the guy took the toilet seat and then he had a picture behind it of like skies and air and stuff like that? And the way he took the picture made it look like he was on a plane, and it looked exactly like it. But then when you see the other shot, you see it's a toilet seat or whatever. I'm also seeing other accounts, like there's one on Instagram that I follow called Influencers in the Wild, where they openly mock influencers who are doing these photo shoots in public places, who have no concept of other people, personal space or anything like that. And I think people are starting to get over it. They're like, yeah, there's been a big unfollow movement for a number of influencers. I saw one the other day where she was complaining. She has, I don't know, 1 million followers on Instagram. And she was complaining because so few people now watch her stuff and comment on it. And she's like, come on, guys, for 1 million people, I should have more that are engaging. But when you look through her stuff, it's very money based. Everything's like, look at how rich I am. Here's the Christmas dinner I'm planning with a 100-foot long dining room table and probably cost $10,000 in food. And it's all luxury based. And especially nowadays with the economy and with the cost of living, affordability, inflation, and so on, people don't want that shoved in their faces as much. They're not going to sit there and consume it when they're having trouble affording one turkey for Christmas this year. So there has, I think, been a bit of a blowback against that type of culture.
With the coaches that you work with, what is typical? Like, are these people who someone might hire to talk with every week, or is it more like cohort or program based stuff? Like what sort of things are people doing? And I'm in particular wondering about the people who would be like small business coaches. Like what sort of offerings are you seeing that people are doing these days? Is there any change this year versus before?
There is. The change I'm seeing, because I actually made this change in my own business from 2014 to probably 2021, 2022. I did group coaching programs, and the way I ran it was, okay, just to throw dates out there, the next group starts January 1st, 2026. So it'll be going for 12 weeks. We'll be doing our calls on this day, this time every week. And what I found was it was becoming increasingly difficult to get people in there that schedules aligned. So it was like negotiating a Middle East peace treaty. Someone was, in this example with dates, would say, well, Mark, I can't start January 1st. Can we start January the 8th? Or I can't do Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Like, is there any way that we could do Thursdays at 5 p.m.? And it's like, holy geez. So I changed my business, as you know, you and I've talked about it earlier this year, to be more of an open 24/7. People can join and they get lifetime access to the resources. They get access to my support calls as long as I'm doing the calls with it, because I just found it was getting increasingly difficult with people around the world to try to work all that out. And I do feel like that's one trend I'm seeing. I'm not saying that the cohort style, that the first way, the original way, isn't being done. There are still people doing it. but it's become, I think, more difficult to fill that. And that's why I like having something that's open all the time. Someone can join if they stumble on my stuff on a Saturday morning at 2 a.m. and they want to join, then they're not going to be limited by certain dates. It used to frustrate me when I started a group coaching program. I'd be, say, 4 or 5 weeks into it, and then I have a perfect person that would be great for it, but we're already so long into that one, they'd have to wait to the next one, and then I'm not helping them right away. So I like it this way.
I that was one of the issues when I started the Business Buyer Advantage group coaching program. And people can learn about that over at businessbuyeradvantage.com. But I tried to build a cohort like what you're describing. Like, we're going to go this many weeks. We're going to start on this day. I was talking about like a year-long program, and people were like, "Well, can it be 6 months, or can it be this amount, or can it can it not start till February or whatever?" It just became so difficult that I ultimately did what you're talking about. Is I just said it's open for anyone to join anytime. And I created an onboarding program so that the new people come in, they go through a workbook, they meet with me, we do a whole onboarding kind of routine, and then they join the regular group and are able to get up to speed and start working on their own stuff. It's proven very successful, and in fact, in this past spring, we celebrated 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So
that's great.
No, sorry, it was 7 years, because it started in the spring of 2018. It'll be 8 years this coming spring that it's been going. I can hardly believe it, actually saying that, but it's been going for quite some time.
Yeah, time flies. Well, I was speaking with a coach I know probably 2 months ago, and so I love my Australian people that I deal with. They're great. I don't like their time zone because it's much. You and I are in the same time zone. If I'm doing calls with them, it'd have to be 8 o'clock, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. It's just not ideal. But the coach I was speaking with, what she was running into is she would be getting calls booked for people from Australia wanting to join her cohort, but then she would do the, for lack of a better word, sales call with them. They're like, "Yeah, I want to do it, but I can't do it at that time and that day." That's like crazy hours for us, over, like, I don't know, 3 a.m. or something. And so she had to stop doing the calls. Like, why am I wasting my time, their time, everything else with it? So there can definitely be challenges when you're trying to work around time zones, for sure.
You said that you're seeing through your clientele that there's an increasing trust deficit. What do you think are wise consumers of coaching or advisory services are doing to kind of check out people and make sure that they're engaging with someone who is trustworthy? Because you started off by saying someone might have had like a $10,000 program that really didn't deliver a whole bunch of value. What are some of the steps someone could take to kind of sleuth out or determine if someone may have a bad reputation for that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things. I know it sounds like common sense to Google or ask AI for something, but I think that should be the bare minimum, at least. I think track record's important. So you and I have been in the game for a long time. Anyone checking out our stuff knows we didn't just roll out of bed this morning and all of a sudden say, "Hey, we're experts at doing what we do." I would be a little careful if someone just started a month ago and they don't have much of a track record, social media and so on with SEO. I think that there's definitely a red flag with it. I also think that people have to get comfortable with not being pressured to say yes on a first call. Now, I've been on the other side where I'll do a call with someone and often it's a bait and switch where I'm getting very careful with what calls I take, but I realize they're trying to sell me into something. And it could be like a $20,000 program, and they get really almost offended if you're not willing to just whip out the credit card and buy it. And I'm thinking, buddy, I've known you for 15 minutes.
You said bait and switch, so you're calling to talk with them about you enrolling in something potentially that has a much lower price point, or
Well, I've had people who book calls with me that made it sound like they want to hire me. And then when we get on the call, it's flipped, and they're trying. I could tell right away. I'm like, "Oh, geez, they're trying to sell me on whatever." You and I talked about this recently with the podcast bait and switch, where people invite you on as a guest, but it's really their funnel. They're trying to sell guests to become clients or to buy whatever they're selling. So if somebody's on a call like that, you have to hold your ground and be like, hey, look, I'm not making any rush decisions. I will get back to you either way. And you're going to hear the usual stuff like, and they have an answer for every objection that you give. I got to talk to my spouse about it. Well, they got an answer for that. Or it's about money. Well, can you really afford not to make a decision today? Or how are you going to hope to sell $20,000 programs if you don't believe in yourself enough to buy a $20,000 program, et cetera, et cetera. I heard a story. Now, this was pre-COVID, but somebody joined my group coaching program. And she said, Mark, I was deciding between your program and I won't say who, but there's a really well-known guru who's out there. He's got a big team. He does a ton of ad spend. And she said, I want to let you know the reason I chose to join your program was I got a really bad feeling with his team member. I had to hang up on him, and he was just putting a hard push on. And when I said it was like a $25,000 program, when I said I have to speak to my husband about it, he said, don't tell your husband, put on your credit card. And then within 30 days, you'll have much more money that's come in. You pay off the credit card, you have all this extra money. He'll be so happy with you. And she said,
he'll be so happy that you totally,
yeah.
Violated,
and I'm not a hard sell guy. When we did our first call,
the partnership of your marriage,
yes, I answered her questions. I'm like, hey, look, if you have any more, let me know. I'm not like, hey, you got to make the decision in the next 10 minutes and twisting their arm, because that's not the way I do business. So I would recommend that people hold their ground, because you're going to have some really good salespeople who are putting the hard press on, and they got answers for everything. And they're going to get you all worked up and try to get a yes right there and get the credit card or the payment. And you just have to be willing to step away from that first call and sort of calm down a little bit and see, okay, is this right for me or not?
I think that's great. I always called that speaking with commission breath back from my sales days. Like if you are so antsy and desperate to make a sale, like the other person can feel that. Like you're putting on so much pressure. And I always say, like, if you feel that someone's speaking with you and they have commission breath, that's a big sign to back out, because someone who's got a lot of confidence in their product or their service, and they've seen other people have great results, they're just not going to behave that way. Because they know that what they have is a quality offering, and whenever you're ready for it, you can just sign up. I'm a big fan of what you said about Googling, right? So you take the coach's name and then put it in brackets so that it includes both of those words in that order, and then you add a plus sign, and then you put in a word like scam, or a word like ripoff, or a word like whatever word that kind of describes someone being upset, and just do these different variations on the Google search. And what you'll do is you'll find articles, posts, etc., where people have put that person's name in, and then it also includes that other word like ripoff, for example. And you can very quickly search through sort of the underbelly of the internet, like Reddit posts and things like that, by doing it this way, and discover if other people have been complaining about that person. And the other thing that I've discovered over the course of time, because I've been invited to these things, is if you go to like who are the people leaving the test? Oh,
I got you. It froze for a second,
Did I freeze?
Yeah, just for a few seconds. So I got you. Said if you're going to, yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you go to someone's website. Okay, if you go to someone's website and they've got a bunch of testimonials and there's like people's photo and stuff, and they say, oh, this was the best thing ever, go look that person up. And if you find that that person is also some kind of coach, guru, consultant, etc., and all the testimonials on their page are the same people, then what you've discovered is you've stumbled upon an engagement pod where these people have aligned themselves to all be each other's boosters. So they're all liking each other's posts, or commenting on each other's posts, or giving testimonials for each other's websites. They get recommendations for each other on LinkedIn. What ideally you want to see is you want to go to someone's LinkedIn and you want to see that they have a bunch of recommendations from a vast array of different people from all over who are clearly legit in whatever it is that they do. Not a bunch of other people that are kind of trying to sell the same sort of thing.
Well, that's a PG-13's the engagement pod. The R-rated would be circle jerk. So, but also the other thing, just to make a point about when you mentioned about Google and then Googling their name and then plus scam, one thing to be careful for is I've done that before, and often affiliates for the person will put something in there like, is Dave Barnett a scam or Dave Barnett a scam? I'm just using you for example. Let's say Joe Smith. Joe Smith scam, you click on it to watch it, and then their video is basically saying, no, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's absolutely incredible. Here's the link to get it. They're getting 50% of the whatever $2,000 price point. I know some people that do that because I've Googled and checked on it. So that's one thing to keep in mind with that.
There are some, I have met some people who have been ripped off by some of these expensive online programs. And when they call and complain, what they're offered is, well, why don't you become our affiliate? And then if you recruit 2 other people, you'll have your money back, because they do a 50% affiliate split. And that's also an enormous sign.
Yeah.
Maybe
or
even
they'll say you'll get it back, but you have to give a testimonial. So then all of a sudden they're blackmailing for it. Reddit's so you have to be careful with Reddit. There's a lot of bitter people in the snarky subreddits when it comes to coaching that I feel like are miserable people and probably didn't put the work into what needed to be done with the program. But there are a lot of people who are sharing sincere reviews about stuff. And it is a little bit frustrating if you're doing your business the right way to read what some of these people are doing. Another one is I've seen people before tell me I give a 100% money back guarantee. Anyone that has it, I've never had to give anyone their money back in 30 years or 20 years. But then you look at the small print and you really have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that money back. Like, hey, I got to see the homework that you're doing. Got to do this, got to do that. No one will ever get their money back because they've structured it that way. So that's another thing to be careful for.
I interviewed a guy, an engineer from Texas, who stumbled into one of these zero down buy a business programs, and that was the case. They had a 30-day money back guarantee, but you had to show them that you had approached like so many hundreds of business owners with, you had to demonstrate you applied their playbook or whatever to get the refund, and it was that kind of scenario. And so nobody ever qualifies.
And I know someone who's a pretty well known, and she often brags that she's never had a dissatisfied client in decades being in business. I know for a fact that the Better Business Bureau is littered with complaints with it. But I think that a lot of people in the coaching world, I don't know if it's ego, narcissism. It could be that, what did they say of Steve Jobs, reality distortion field? If you just believe in something enough and you're saying it, that people are like, oh, okay, she's never had any complaints, when there are a lot out there. So yeah, just be careful.
We have a question. What's your 5-step blueprint for starting an advisory business? Do you have such a thing, a 5-step blueprint? I could probably come up with one on the
I have a 3-step blueprint I can share.
Really?
And this is going to sound extremely common sense when I tell people. They're like, oh yeah, of course, Mark. But in my experience, coaches or new coaches are never doing all 3 of these steps. They might do 1 or 2, but they never nail all 3. So I've always said that to be a successful coach, you have to be able to answer 3 questions. Who do you help? How do you help them? What's your offers? And where do you find them? And again, people might think, oh yeah, I know that. But then you get asked them and they usually don't have all 3. And the one that they're usually stuck on is number 3, where to find them. Sometimes it could be one of the others, but so that would be my answer to questions is first get those locked in, that if you can answer all 3 of those, it'll make it much easier going forward.
Yeah. So somebody who wants to write online content or blog posts for, travel agents, it's like, what do? I create online blog posts. Who for travel agents? How do I find them? I, use the internet, Yellow Page listings, whatever. I can find travel agents. Like,
yeah,
because you need to figure out, to your point, what is it that you do and why it's valuable to someone, and who, so that you can then make the offer to them. It's a pretty simple formula. I totally get it. If you don't know who you're selling to, then how do you target that? And unfortunately, or, people don't often see the difference between a company like Coca-Cola and an advisory business, right? Like Coca-Cola is literally trying to sell stuff to everybody.
Yeah.
right? So they've got this omnipresent marketing machine that just puts the Coke logo and advertisements everywhere. But that doesn't work for someone who's trying to build a small advisory practice. You have to do more of a sales function, which means you have to be able to find out who you want to talk to, and that means identifying the audience. One of the big issues that I have is it's really hard for me to identify who might be thinking about buying a business. And so that means that I can't literally go out and do a sales effort to approach people who might be thinking about buying a business. That's why I started creating content on YouTube, so that people who were thinking about that could search for things on the internet and hopefully come across my content.
Yeah.
And so that
You
was my
touch
plan for meeting them.
you touch on a really important point. I'm a big fan of being able to identify who you're targeting. So for me, it's easier because it's people who are interested in coaching. They could be current coaches who are struggling to get clients, or maybe they're aspiring coaches. I had someone on my podcast years ago, and he had originally been a general business coach just to work with any business. He decided to narrow it down to work with just dentists. And at the time, he was one of the few. Now it's become a little more crowded, but that you can see how that's much easier. The other one, I think you connected me with Murray Voth, didn't you?
Yeah, he was on the channel as a live stream guest.
Yeah.
He's a coach for auto repair business owners.
Yeah, so I use Murray's name a lot when I'm talking to people. So anyone who doesn't know Murray, he deals with like garage mechanic shops, and that's what his thing is. If I owned a repair shop and I had to choose between Joe Smith, who deals with every business out there, or Murray Voth, who this is what he eats, sleeps, breathes, just this niche, I'm going to go with Murray. And he can speak their language. He knows what's keeping them up at night and so on. And there's more than enough service stations or repair shops out there. I think people sometimes think, well, I can't do that because I'm going to narrow it down too much. There's not going to be enough potential clients. You can't work with very many out of 8 billion people in the world regardless, right? So instead of saying I got to be able to work with absolutely everyone, there are a few niches that are so small that you couldn't make a good business with them. I mean, I'm sure there's some. The example I always give is if you niche down and say, I want to work with a left-handed dentist in Boise, Idaho, named Bob, who's going through a divorce and wants to sell in the next 6 months, that might be a little bit too targeted there. There might be one dentist, Bob, going through that, but most people could definitely narrow down. I see it with Facebook groups. People say, oh, I'm going to start a Facebook group, and it's just for motivation or success or for entrepreneurs. And it's like, man, everyone's in hundreds of Facebook groups. That's not exciting for them, and it's way too broad.
Yeah. A follow-up question about how you price your services.
So this one's always tricky because you get some people out there that tell you to shoot for the moon and to value yourself, and you got to live in the real world too. So I was speaking to someone a while back, and she prices her services like 50 to 125K. And she's like, Mark, you should be charging 125K for your one-on-one. And my audience is more McDonald's than whatever the fancy restaurant in whoever city might be.
Do you think that there are many people in the world paying $125,000 a year to a business coach?
I hate to say it because I like her and we get along well, but I'm somewhat skeptical of that because for 125K, somebody's got to be making multiple millions, I would think, at least, low 7 figures at the very least. Now there are, I just finished reading a book. The book I recommended to you, Daniel Priestley's new one, Lifestyle Business Playbook.
Oh yeah. You told me about that the other day. Yeah.
He tells a story of a relationship coach who her niche is helping ultra high net worth people with relationships, like these men that could stand to lose hundreds of millions of dollars if they go through a divorce. So could she charge 100 or $1 million? Probably, because of those numbers are so inflated, but she's not. If it's somebody who makes 100,
I don't think people build net worths of $100 million by spending their money that way.
Well, I don't know. I do think that, well, I remember a bumper sticker from when I was growing up. I don't know if you saw it, you and I are roughly the same age. Love is grand, divorce is 20 grand is what it said. Now, adjusted for inflation in today's times, it's much more than 20 grand. I guess my point being, they're going to pay more than the average Joe that's making $100K a year and wants to save their marriage if they're worth that much. But that was his point, Daniel Priestley, in the book is, and I recommend that book. He says to focus on the markets that have money as opposed to trying to sell something to markets that are broke, because it's just going to be swimming upstream and very difficult.
Yeah, I think that if I was going to add another step to the 3 steps that you just shared, it would be, do those people have the money and ability to pay whatever the price is that you're going to charge, right? And so, for our consulting work that we do, we help people with business valuations, packaging businesses for sales, running ad programs. We help people with buyer insight analyses. That's when we analyze a business someone might want to buy. And what we have tried to do is we've looked at, well, what does it cost us to do these services? Because obviously the price we charge has to be higher than that. And then we're like, well, what kind of value are we delivering? So, when it comes to the buyer insight analyses, it's kind of like insurance, because if somebody's going to put up a couple $100,000 or $1 million to buy a business, how much is it worth for them to try to spot as many red flags as they can early in the process and avoid the bad investment and avoid saving time? So if you kind of frame it with respect to insurance, it kind of gives an idea of what the value of that service could be. When we talk about our seller services, we always frame it with respect to what it might cost with a business broker to do that, with very much understanding that our services are not the same as what a business broker does. So business brokers provide much more service for a much higher price. It's also usually a contingency fee. If it only gets paid if you sell the business. So for us, if we're offering some of those services, so stripped down value, but it's non-contingent, people pay us for doing the work as we go, where can we price that where it makes sense for somebody who wants a more value-oriented solution to exiting their business? So those are the things that we take into consideration when putting prices on our consulting projects.
Yeah.
And I think that the pricing is okay. Sometimes it worries me that very few people ever complain about the price, but
yeah, that could mean, well,
maybe it's too low. I don't know.
I'll share a really quick tip, because I don't know if the next guest is coming on here soon. But one of the best pieces of advice I got to help sell your services, whatever package you have, is you take, let's say you're selling a coaching package for $3,000. And what you do is you put a 0 on the end of it and say, okay, 30,000. What would I have to do here to make this worth $30,000? And you take some time to think about it and you work it all out. You got it all down. You're like, oh, this feels really good. This is a $30,000 package. Then you erase that 0. You go back to 3,000, but you keep everything that's in there. So energetically, suddenly in your mind, it's easier to sell, because you're like, yeah, this is worth $30,000. They would be crazy to not take it at $3,000. And it makes it much easier to sell. But you got to pick, well, I always say when you're pricing, pick a price point that you have to feel good about it, because if you don't believe it's worth it, like if I would love to charge $1 million for my coaching package. If anyone wants to pay, I'll include my PayPal link here, Dave. But I know that I can't get it's not worth $1 million. So that's not going to feel good when I'm talking to people about it. So you want to go high enough that it feels good. You're challenging yourself, you're pushing yourself, but not so high that you're like, oh, gee, this doesn't feel good. I don't think it's worth that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because recently we had a pricing question, because I'm going to be next month, I'm going to be in Austin, and we're doing a 1-day event. It's called the Business Buyer Boardroom, and I'll put the screen up there. It's going to be January 16th in Austin. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I put a price on this? And so I started to think about the amount of time that the person would be spending with me and the material we'd be covering. And then I compared it with what we charge for a 70-minute one-on-one consult that I do. So obviously spending a day together with me and some other people who are buying a business is worth more than just spending 70 minutes with me, right? So we've got to be north of that point. And then we also have to frame it with respect to what is the other option for the person. So the person could join the group coaching program, which would give them access to a lot more of the material, but less sort of one-on-one refinement or tailoring of the content or information for their specific situation. So we kind of took all those things into consideration, and then we did what you suggested. We said, how do we then add more value? So what we did at the end was, when we came up with the price point we thought was correct, we then added credit towards a group coaching program as an extra sweetener. So, hey, you can come, you can spend the day. Here's the investment that we think makes sense. And then if you want even more, you can get like basically half off your first quarter of the group coaching program because you came to this event. And so the uptake has been okay. Like there's, I think, 2 seats left right now. And so we're happy about that. It's, it's on the agenda. It's going to happen. It's coming up in just a few weeks. But it was a real struggle, right? Because you're always second guessing yourself. Does it make sense? Would somebody actually pay this price? What are people going to object to? I think that as entrepreneurs, we know that we create value in our businesses and we have happy customers by delivering good value. I don't necessarily think you should be charging $50,000 for your coaching, but I think that the person's idea that many people err on the low side is probably true more often than not.
Yeah. My favorite pricing story is coach. I know, I think he 10x'd what he was charging because he was way too low, but he was really scared about it. And he did a call with the first prospect with the new pricing. And the person said, so how much is it to work together? Now, this wasn't a video call. He couldn't do this video, but it was audio. But he spit out the super high number. And he told me that he literally had to put his fist in his mouth to keep himself from talking, because what's most human reaction to that is you have to justify it. So if you bump it from 5,000, let's say you're charging 50,000, and Dave, you say, well, how much is it? I say, well, it's 50,000, Dave, but you're going to get this, you're going to get that, and you start to try to justify it. And he said, so he physically had his fist in his mouth to keep himself from talking. And it wasn't that long. It was only like 10 seconds, but he said it felt like it was 10 minutes. It was the longest 10 seconds of his life. And the guy goes, cool. So how do I pay you? And so he got the sale with it. So there's a tip. If anyone is on audio, shove your fist in your mouth just to keep yourself from trying to justify.
But this is a general sales tip, is give people a chance to think and respond, and then listen to them when they respond. But yeah, you're right. A lot of people have a fear of dead air or whatever. Like they think they just have to keep talking when you don't have to keep talking.
Exactly. Same with podcast interviews. I learned that from doing almost 1,000 of them. And maybe I still do it sometimes, but early on, if there's dead air, I felt like I'd have to jump in, or you use filler words, just something, because we don't like silence. And now I'll let the guest expand on things, and I'll wait till they're done their thought. Then I go in.
So one of the cool things that I did this year, I don't know if I told you this last time we were talking, but I was invited to a bunch of events this year. Like I went to the B-Sage Wedding Industry Conference in Cancun earlier in this year. Then I went to the Economy Conference in Cincinnati. I was invited to a regional conference for credit union, small business lending loan officers. I also went to a Bank on Yourself insurance conference in Michigan this year. And I was also invited to something called Food and Beverage Atlantic. And so one of the things that I was trying to do this year was I was trying to get photographers to get like video clips of me at these different events, because doing more live speaking events is one of my goals, like for the years going forward. And so this year, I, for the first time, actually got a speaker reel put together. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. And you had told me about that, I think, when we got together for coffee.
Do you want to see it? I loaded it up.
Yeah.
All
let's
right.
have a look.
So it's like 1 minute and 40 seconds. So this is like the worldwide debut. But here, I'm gonna press play and we'll check it out. Hey there, I'm David C. Barnett, and I help small business owners, franchisees, and the professionals who serve them, CPAs, lawyers, bankers, make smarter decisions about buying, selling, financing, and managing these small businesses, or about having smarter conversations with their owners. Every presentation I give is custom tailored to your audience and your goals, whether it's a national convention, a local business association, or a room full of entrepreneurs looking for their next step. I've spoken for organizations like community development agencies, industry trade conferences, franchise system operators such as Title Boxing and Napa Auto Pro, and even franchise owners associations such as Sylvan Learning. These sessions range from intimate, live, and virtual mastermind sessions to full-scale conferences across North America on a big stage. Event organizers tell me that they appreciate that I'm easy to work with. I understand the pressures of event planning, so I bring a systematized approach to make sure everything runs smoothly. From pre-event promotion to sending you a reassuring text when I've touched down in your city and making myself available to your attendees after my talk. As one organizer put it, all available seats were reserved for the first time in memory, and feedback was enthusiastic. Another said, your presentation was something that's still being talked about by those in attendance. And a corporate client shared excellent feedback, great value and insight all around. If you're planning an event for business owners or professionals who work with them and you want a reliable, insightful, and engaging speaker who helps your audience walk away with practical tools, let's make your event a success story. Visit bookdavidcbarnett.com to learn more or to book a call where we can discuss inviting me for your next successful event.
Looks good.
What do you think? Did you like that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm no expert on
that's
speaker
like revision
reels,
55.
Yeah. No, I think that's good and it's smart, especially if something that's so visual as speaking. And when I go to get booked on podcasts, I have a podcast one sheet, right? Which like basically speaker sheet. It's 1 page document, but with speaking, I think people want to see you on stage and kind of how the body language is and all that other stuff. So,
yeah. So, that's one of my goals for the coming years is to go do more things like that. I had Lauren Feldman on earlier. I'm going to be going to his event in Cincinnati, which is in the spring. And if anyone's tuned in and they've got anything else that I should be going to, reach out and contact me because I'm looking for all opportunities.
awesome. Yeah, I know a few people that book events and stuff, so I should get that. Well, I guess I got, what was it? Book David C. Barnett, the page.
Yeah. BookDavidCbarnett.com. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll mention that because I have some networking type folks that run events. So good stuff.
Cool. So I don't know if Rick is coming. Like he's supposed to tune in here a few minutes ago and he hasn't. So my guess is that something came up for him. But what you got Christmas? You're gonna spend some time with your son?
Yeah. He actually just just let people know. I'll preface it. He's 17 years old, so in grade 12, he just woke up, and it's like 2:42 our time. So Christmas holidays is, me. I'm earlier to bed now, but he's up at 2 or 3 a.m. playing video games or whatever. So he just emerged from his cave, and I hear him out there pouring cereal and all that stuff. But yeah, enjoying some time with the family. Hopefully enjoying time tomorrow with my mom and her boyfriend just passed maybe this is TMI, passed a kidney stone last night. He was in pain yesterday and luckily he went into the hospital and he had a kidney stone. So I don't know if they're still cooking Christmas dinner or not. But I'm the type of person, I just appreciate getting some time off. I got some new books to read and just kind of chilling and decompressing because it's just go all year. So yeah, it should be a good time.
Yeah, I close the office between Christmas and New Year's, so I give everyone the extra days off between the holidays. It's a quiet time anyway for us. Like we don't get a whole lot of activity or inquiries during that time, and so it gives everyone extra time to rest and relax and recharge their batteries. I want to point out to everybody though that who might be tuned in that I just finished recording the last of this year's holiday chat calls. So starting tomorrow, Christmas Day, and every day, there's going to be an email coming out with a new holiday chat call. It is only the people on the email list who get these. So if you want to get these hour-long consulting calls that people actually paid me to do, so they're all real scenarios, and you're not on the email list, go over to davidcbarnettlist.com. In addition to getting those emails over the holidays, you're also going to get 7 free gifts emailed out to you over the course of the first few weeks that you're a member. Some of these include books that I've written, and others include special recordings that are only available to people who sign up for the email list. So that's something you should be aware of as well. And yeah, like, I don't know. What else is there to say? I'm excited for
Well,
Christmas. I've got 2 Christmas dinners lined up for myself this year.
Well, one thing is, because I was giving you an update, I'm a workaholic and I'm working on that. So I've made some changes with my business to work less. And I'll never be a 4-hour work week guy, but I don't want to be 100 hours either. So it's been interesting this Christmas. I mean, in a nutshell, some of the changes, I don't do calls on Mondays or Fridays now or the weekends. I do constrict my calls to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons. More discerning with who I'm doing the calls with. I'm no longer doing daily emails. I'm sending fewer emails out. There's just some different changes. But I felt old marks and bad habits creeping in. So I have a mastermind I run every second Wednesday. So today was supposed to be on our normal schedule. Actually, a mastermind runs every second Wednesday and a coaching call that I do. And the old Mark habit crept in where I asked people in the previous call, well, hey, why don't we do it Monday, the 22nd, 2 days ago or whatever. And then I'm like, wait, I got to be really make a long story short, we're pushing it to January, whatever the next one is, January, I forgot, 7th. But I find that's a challenge. If you're a workaholic, you're loading more stuff onto your plate that you don't have to. And I said, guys, I got to practice what I preach here. I'm trying to help you work fewer hours. I'm trying to work fewer hours. So I got to hold off this week. So this week I have 3 calls, including this one, when on an average week, I'm around 20, might be like 17, 18 calls with it. And the next week is 3 calls as well. So I'm going to be going crazy, I'm sure, but I'm committed to fixing my workaholism.
I remember years ago, you and I had this conversation where, like, if you are a person who runs a business where you make sales all the time and you have to always be fighting to bring that revenue in, it can feel scary when you have a lull in your business and it's like quiet and you have like a few hours where there's really nothing to do and you feel like you should fill the time by doing some kind of activity. Go make a social media post, go call somebody, whatever, to try to shake the tree to bring money in. What I've learned is that if you've built a marketing apparatus, like for me, it's a YouTube channel, the email list, like all the posting I do on LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. If you've built that machine and that machine has reliably been bringing people to you for years, when things get quiet, you have to devote that time to relaxing because you don't know what's going to happen next week. You can get 7 calls next week of people that want to do major work with you, and then you'll have no time to yourself and you'll be, pressured to put in extra hours to try to cover things. And, that's always my advice to people is if your business is functioning, I'm not talking about 3 weeks of dead air where you're not hearing from anybody. That's a little bit different. But if you find yourself with an afternoon where there's not much to do, like go take a walk in the park. Like,
well, the weird thing
enjoy
is
the time while you can.
I've had a good December and I've worked way less hours this December than previous Decembers. And I'm not like a super woo-woo guy, but I think there is something to be said there that sometimes you're in front of the laptop 24/7. It's not really productive work or good quality stuff you're putting out there. And this December, I've sometimes just been in my recliner reading a new book and I get a PayPal notification totally out of left field. This just happened about a week ago. Someone I spoke to 18 months ago, he kind of went MIA, never heard back from him. Now he's ready to do something together. We did a quick call. He paid during the call. And I'm like, man, so Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich that when things get rolling for you, you're going to wonder where the money was during the hard times when it's like you're pulling teeth. And I think there's something to be said that you could be pressing too hard. But it is a challenge because there's a little voice in my head. I'm in my living room reading and the laptop's in the home office. And it's, did you see the latest Spider-Man No Way Home movie? You may not get this reference.
I don't know if I did or not. Is that the one with the 3 Spider-Mans?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay,
so Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin's like, his mask is off him and it's over on the dumpster and it's like, you coward, we have a world to conquer here or whatever. And that's what my laptop is saying to me when I'm in the other room. You lazy piece of crap. What are you doing? Reading a book. Get in here, So I have to push that away. One thing that has helped is I keep my laptop and my work stuff in the home office. I don't bring it into the living room or into bed. so it's not bleeding into the personal space, which sounds funny. People say, oh, well, who cares? But if your laptop's sitting there in the living room while you're watching Netflix and it's in eyesight it doesn't help you relax for sure. So
Yeah.
I like keeping it separate. I close the door. So when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm playing, and don't have them mix or bleed into each other.
We have, as we wind up here, we have a question that came up on the screen here. So Enjoy says, hey, David, do you have any boot camps on financial analysis? I've been in real estate acquisitions for a while, and my clients are asking me for more cash flow businesses, need help understanding. Well, there's two things that I would recommend. So to help understand how to buy a business and to do analysis on a business that you might buy, then you're going to want to go over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. And I have, where is that banner? There it is. So businessbuyeradvantage.com. There's an online training program. It's all been completely updated for 2025, Business Buyer Advantage 4.0. That teaches you all about how to buy a business, the terminology. There's a cash flow calculator, a BBA analysis tool within that program that helps you analyze whether a deal makes sense or not. So that's the first one. But if you want further work on understanding cash flow forecasting and actually writing business plans or doing cash flow analysis, then my program at bizplanschool.com, which is the cash flow forecasting and business plan writing program, would definitely be for you as well. And so both of those are, for sale every day kind of thing. I would recommend you do Business Buyer Advantage first. And then if you want to go deeper into cash flow forecasting and understanding, models on Excel and stuff, then go into the Biz Plan School. Biz Plan School, we start with a blank spreadsheet, and I teach you step by step how to build into an actual business forecast model for whatever kind of business it is. And there's 5 sample companies that we use throughout the course of the evolution of that program. A couple of them are startup, a couple of them are acquisition. And then at the end, I show you how to put it all together into a business plan for a lender or an investor or something like that. So that's what I would recommend. Thank you very much for the tee up on the ad. And I think I'm done. I think this has been Christmas Eve. I don't know why Rick didn't come. Oh well, we'll miss Rick this year. We'll catch him again next year. But Merry Christmas, man. And Merry Christmas.
Thanks for the invite again, Dave. I guess I'll see you next Christmas Eve. Now I'll see you before then. But thanks everyone who watched and asked questions too. And I hope everyone gets a chance to relax over the holidays, enjoy the time, because as entrepreneurs, we all, I think, work too hard. So we deserve it.
Yeah, and thanks for Mike and Rocky and Lauren who showed up earlier today. Great to see you guys as well. And talk about meeting people in person. The only person on the show today I haven't met in person is Lauren, and I'm going to see him in Cincinnati. So I'm excited about that. And with that, I'll say see you later, everybody. Ciao. So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.